Well, I'm Bob Dent. I'm the 2018 AONE president, and welcome here to this session. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Nursing Thought Leader session with our 2018 Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, Dr. Linda Everett. And so let's
Thank you.
So she's very popular, but I think her shoes may be even more popular.
My son actually picked these shoes out because he wanted to get out of the shoe store. Okay, so blame him.
So these thought leader sessions allow us the opportunity to hear from colleagues who have contributed a great wealth of knowledge to nursing leadership. This session will begin with an interview of Linda, during which we will be videotaping this session. Then we'll turn the video off, turn up the lights, and give you the opportunity to tap into Linda's wealth of wisdom. You can be asking questions. We do have 3x5 cards that have been handed out. You may write your question on that, but we will have a mic as well that will be passed around, and you can ask questions from the audience as well. As with all sessions, you will earn 0.75 CNE credit by attending the entire session and completing the online session evaluation. So I am happy to introduce this year's Lifetime Achievement Award winner and nursing thought leader, Linda Quinn Everett. Linda is an adjunct professor at Indiana University School of Nursing and Case Western Reserve University, consulting associate, Duke University School of Nursing, faculty for the AONE, and leadership consultant. Previously, Dr. Everett served as executive vice president and chief nurse executive at Indiana University Health in Indianapolis, right here. Among her achievements are serving in leadership roles for AONE and Sigma Theta Tau International, being named as a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing, and completing the Johnson & Johnson Wharton's Fellow Program in Management for nurse executives at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Some of her most notable recognitions include receiving the National League for Nursing, the NLN President's Award in recognition of her work to strengthen academic practice partnerships. Additionally, the Marion E. Broom and Linda Q. Everett Endowed Lectureship for Leadership Advancement in Indiana University School of Nursing. She was awarded the Sagamore of the Wabash Award from Indiana Governor Michael Pence in recognition of distinguished service to the state. She has much more to her list of accomplishments, and we appreciate all that you've given to the nursing profession from there. Well, today's session, as Linda and I had an opportunity to talk, is about courage as an essential element of leadership. So Winston Churchill said courage is the most important of all virtues because it's the one that makes all other virtues possible. And then C.S. Lewis took that one step further by saying that courage is all of the other virtues at the point where they're tested. It's easy to have integrity when there is no temptation, and it's easy to be brave when there is no danger, but it takes courage to live one's values. So Linda, as a nurse leader, how do you define or what is courage?
Well, for me, and I will quote another figure, Ernest Hemingway said that courage is grace under pressure. And you all know, most of you know, or you will soon know, that I am of Irish descent. And so grace is not one of my strong suits on a good day. But what I do have is a lot of passion. And I believe that passion is the core ingredient of courage. To have the passion to stand up for what you believe, to hold your values strong in face of adversity, and to be prepared to face the consequences, the good consequences and the bad consequences. That's what courage means to me. And I don't see myself as a physically courageous person. I mean, I couldn't, I've never been in the military. I've not been a police officer. I've not done anything that takes really physical courage, but I did witness physical courage from my father when I was about 6 years old. And we were on the way to school, And my passion was coming through that day, and I was a little bit unhappy with him. And I was marching ahead of him down the street in Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up in German Village. And all of a sudden, I heard him screaming, and I turned around, and a house was on fire. And he was carrying my brother on his shoulders, and he sat my brother down, and he ran into the house. And I thought, what's the matter with you? That house is on fire. But he goes in, and he pulled 2 children out of that house. And one of them survived, and one of them didn't. And he was burned somewhat, not badly. But I saw that, and I thought, that really took guts. And he looked at me, and he said, it was the right thing to do. And you would do the same thing. You would go in to save a life. And you know, he never spoke about that again. Now, this was a man who was a survivor of a POW camp. And he never really talked about that either. But I realized then that was courage. And although, again, I've never really demonstrated physical courage, I don't think. But I think what I possess, and many of you do, probably all of you do as nurse leaders, is moral courage. And moral courage, again, is standing by your beliefs, by principles and values by which you live, and making decisions that you believe are right for the right reasons. And not to be paralyzed by fear of what might happen if you stand up for those beliefs.
So how do you develop that courage then?
You know, I think it's a behavior. I think it's like any behavior. It's like a muscle group that you want to develop in the gym. Not that I do that, but you know, for those of you who do it. It's repetitive. And maybe you start out with small acts of courage, or small times or events when you stand up for what you believe. You might be in the minority. Maybe you're the voice in the crowd that is a lone voice, but it takes courage to do that, and there's a fear factor there, so you have to be able to overcome that fear. Courage does not always roar in. It can be that little voice in the back of your head when you've had a bad day, and you go home, and you say, I'm going to try again tomorrow. I'm going to try to do this again tomorrow. That takes courage to go back and keep trying and trying. It's resilience. So that's how I think you develop it. It's a learned behavior that you have to develop over time, like any muscle group, like training a dog. I have a puppy at home. Oh, please, let's not go there. Training that dog, and it's repetitive. And I think that's how you develop it.
Good. I'm sure you have stories over the course of your career that you may be able to share where you had to summon a large amount of courage.
I can think of several, and I've pondered this question over the last few weeks of what scenarios will I call on, because there have been so many. And you have to be careful when you start talking about scenarios like this and events and vignettes, because you don't want to really embarrass anyone, expose anything. But there's an episode or a period of time when I was at the University of Iowa. Who's from the University of Iowa here? Who worked with me at Iowa? Okay, so you will remember this. It was in the early 2000s when the magnet program was really gaining speed and was really on a major roll. And of course, we wanted to be part of that. I mean, we were a great environment. We were the home of the Iowa model of evidence-based practice. You know, we thought we were spiffy. And we deserved to have magnet status. So we set about to do that. Well, we ran into significant opposition, and the opposition came in the form of the union. And the union decided that, no, we were not a magnet environment. Yes, the nursing staff were great. They were terrific people, excellent people. But the administration was terrible, ugly, awful, evil people. And we can't do that. And they fought the magnet effort every step of the way. Am I right, folks? Iowa Hawkeyes, They fought it tooth and nail every day. They wrote to the state, they wrote to Joint Commission, they wrote to the magnet people. It was just on and on and on. And you know, I thought, how am I going to deal with this? Am I going to take this through? What do I do about this? So I thought about it, and I thought, I'm going to become a magnet appraiser. I'm going to find out how to deal with this problem. So I did. I became a magnet appraiser, and I learned about magnet from the ground up. And one thing that I learned on the first day of training was you mobilize the environment. You mobilize the positive people on that nursing staff and the hospital, because it's not just about nursing, and you isolate those people who don't want to join the effort. That's what we did, and they fought it right up until the day of the review, and Donna Heron, down is here I think somewhere, was our appraiser, and they called, the union people called a union meeting in their, whatever it was, their headquarters or, you know, their house, or no, it wasn't a house, it was a warehouse or something, and served them Cheetos or something, and told them how mean and awful my leadership was, the leadership of the hospital, and I thought, I just stuck to it, and my team did. It was a team effort. Everyone got behind it. The whole hospital got behind it, and we not only achieved magnet, we had 2 or 3 exemplars to boot. That was one of the crowning achievements of my time in Iowa, and it took tremendous courage and tremendous strength. So that's one example. Do I have time for a second one?
Oh, yes.
Okay, the second one happened. The second scenario I'd like to share, and it's a little more sensitive than that. And I will be a little bit vague about it, but you'll get the point. It was in a health system not far away. And there was a certain specialty in this health system that would be considered what you might call a rainmaker, a cash cow, money, money, money into the organization. And the leader of that specialty program was, and I am certain, although the individual is no longer in the state, was a bully. And I'm being kind, a bully. Refused to have he refused, and he had his residents refuse to wash their hands when they went into the rooms. He refused to have whiteboards in the room, pulled the whiteboards down, any type of flyer or any type of message that would come out from administration about patient care and safety, went through and tore them down. He was mean and belligerent, not only to the nursing staff, but to the pharmacists, the social workers, the chaplains, and everyone. And the organization was reticent to deal with this behavior. 8 staff nurses came to me and said, you have to do something about this. And I did. And I reported him to the Professional Standards Committee of the hospital, run by physicians, and I sat on that panel. And it reached the board of directors, and he received sanctions for his behavior. It took tremendous courage because I went against the grain on many, many fronts. I expended a lot of social capital and a lot of political capital, but by God, I believed in what he was doing was wrong for patient care, it was wrong for the environment, it was wrong for nursing staff, social workers, and other nurses. I could not live with that, and I thought, if they fire me, they fire me. I will go out with righteously. And so those are 2 examples where I really had to use courage, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. And finally, that individual did leave the organization not long after I stepped down from my executive practice. But because those 8 nurses came directly to me, there was no question in my mind I had to deal with that bullying behavior. And I will tell you, as a nurse exec, you're faced with these kinds of things, maybe not that dramatic, but usually these kinds of confrontations happen in your office with you and another administrator, your boss, a nurse, a social worker, a pharmacist, or someone. And there's not a lot of media around it, but you have to make a decision. And you have to make decisions that are based on what you believe in your values. It does help to have 9 lives, though, I will say. And probably by the time I left Indiana, I was on 8.75. But I am proud to say that in my long career as a nurse exec, I was never asked to leave a position. I was never fired. I was never offered a severance package. And, you know, I think about that, and that just takes courage to even say that.
So we think about, I mean, you gave 2 great examples and where the consequences of your courageous actions were positive in there. What if you did not take those courageous actions? Can you imagine by not taking the courageous actions, what happens?
Well, if I hadn't taken those, stood by my convictions and my passion and fortitude with the Iowa example, we wouldn't have gotten Magnet. The union folks would have been successful. I would have failed in my goals and objectives. It would have been a tarnish on my reputation as a nurse leader. And more importantly, it would have been very hard to live with. It would have been hard to swallow. It would have been hard to look in the mirror and see my face and say that, you know, you just failed because you could not bring this home. And I was confident that once I learned what it was about and how to really mobilize people, and it helps to be sort of a cheerleader too. I mean, you know, I'm an extrovert when it comes to leadership, and I think that was really a key component. But my team was superb. And some of them are in the audience here this afternoon, and they know what we went through during that time, and it was extremely stressful for a lot of people. But if I hadn't, it would have been a devastating blow to that environment, to patient care, and to my ego, which is very fragile anyway.
So whenever we talk about environment, I know Kathy Harris gave a question earlier. She was asking, how do you have an environment where it's conducive to expressing courage? How do you create that? Outside of your courageous actions that you've had, just establishing and creating that environment where others on your team can.
Well, I think you have to role model the behaviors. If the staff see you making decisions, trying to make the best choice in difficult in situations, and they see that time and time again, I think that that's a component of it. But it's about just culture, and I know that Kathy Harris is a big advocate, as most of us are, about just culture and doing the right thing for the right reasons at the right time. And there has to be a supportive environment for that. Now, in my example from Indiana, I went up against, I'm telling you, in that example, I went up against physicians. Well, most of the physicians knew where I was coming from with that, and they supported that. But they were not in the power and influence roles to really make a difference of that. But most of the administration was not. And I'm no longer in harness, as Angela McBride would say. I'm no longer in harness, so I can speak a little more freely about that. But I was up against a huge, huge mountain, and it wasn't until it went to the board that things started to resolve. And again, I was on the line for that. But in terms of your question, yes, the environment has to be supportive of courage, and not all environments are supportive of that. So just think about that. If you're in an environment that doesn't support risk-taking, because courage is about risk-taking, it can be fearful. But if you're in an environment that's going to beat you down because you take a risk, because you stand up for what you believe, because it's right for patients or families or nurses or the environment, then maybe you're in the wrong environment, would be my answer.
And I've got a couple more questions here, and then we'll start taking the other questions from the audience. But here's one question for you. What has been your biggest challenge related to the glass ceiling over the span of your career?
My biggest challenge? Mm-hmm. Well, I was shorter than everybody else at the table. That doesn't help. That doesn't help. And when I came to Indiana and I sat in the boardroom for the first day, and a lot of these chairs, you know, they're low, and I just happened to sit in a low chair at that table, and so here I am. And the chief medical officer came in and sat down, and he looked at me. He said, "Oh, no, you need a bigger chair." And he went around the room, and he got one that worked, and he put it up as high, and then, of course, my feet are swinging at the bottom, and he said, "You need to sit tall at this table." But that's not answering your question. The biggest challenge is that when I became, my first nurse exec job was in the Detroit Medical Center in Michigan, and I saw at least one person from the old DMC, a few people, okay, that I was the only woman on the executive team, and I was a nurse. So right away, you've got two strikes against you in that environment. This was in the 90s. And just being heard, and being at the table is a start, but you have to show your passion and your assertiveness at that table, and again, sticking to your beliefs and your convictions. And in the beginning, as a novice nurse exec, it was a learning curve. It was a learning curve. And when we went through our first budget cycle, when I was in that role, I got beat up. That was a challenge, and I got beat up. And I went to my boss at the time, and I said, "Why is it that nursing has to take $25 million or whatever it was out of the budget? And, these other departments, I don't understand the rationale." "Well, you're new and you don't understand." "No, but I'm a quick learner. So help me here." So I think that the biggest challenge was just really letting them know that you're serious. You're serious and you're knowledgeable. I was in the PhD program at the University of Michigan at the time. I'm no dummy. I may not be a physician, and I'm certainly not male. And I'm 5'2". I can't help that. But I'm not stupid. So help me understand how I can make this a better experience next time, because this was very stressful for me. That was a challenge for me. And then after that, in that organization, it got a lot easier. Because pretty soon it was like, bring a Snickers bar for Everett, because if her blood sugar goes down, this is going to be ugly. So I broke the glass ceiling with a Snickers bar.
Very good. So you've been highly engaged member of AONE for a very long time.
Long time.
Yeah. So what has been the value of AONE to you?
Oh my goodness! I mean, where do you start the list? It's just been a phenomenal organization, and I joined back in the 90s when I went to Detroit. I was a nurse manager in Akron, Ohio, and then was hired after my master's program at Case Western into a director position in Detroit. And my boss there at the time was a member of AONE. And she had all of the directors become members of AONE. And then I started coming to the meetings, and I started learning and networking. Oh, there's no organization that's better at networking than AONE. And the resources and the wisdom and the collegiality. And this was before social media. I mean, this was when, you had, God forbid, pick up the phone and call somebody. But I learned so much from my colleagues at AONE. And then I was on the board twice. I was in my first venture on the board was a Region 5 rep when I was in Michigan. And I developed those relationships, and I still have them. And then later I came back and became president-elect, past president. And I still have those relationships. Some of them are very positive, and then there are others in the front row here. But it's just been, and it has grown significantly over the years. I mean, we're 10,000 now or something like that.
Yes.
When I was president, I don't think it was 5,000, 6,000, but it had grown at that time. So if you're interested in career progression and development and maturity and leadership, this is the organization. And I'm a lifelong member, will always be. a member of AONE and stay involved even after my presidency. I've continued to be. I'm on the faculty with teaching the finance executive program, and on the research committee for the foundation, and just enjoy my time with my colleagues and my friends. And I say, if you're not a member of AONE, sign up today. If you're interested in a role in nursing leadership, I don't care at what level, you will benefit from this organization. It's a value-added proposition for your career.
And I believe today, was it 10 years ago?
11 years ago today,
yeah.
I was president and did my president's speech like Bob did. And it's just serendipitous that 11 years, Friday, April 13th, that I would be back on the stage at AONE in this very prestigious and humbling role.
As a Lifetime Achievement Award. So thank you for all that.
Thank you.
And with that, I think that wraps it up
It's
on
a wrap.
this. It's a wrap. It's a
Okay,
wrap.
well, thank you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the attention. I wish you all the best in your careers. And if there's anything I can ever do for any of you, I'm on social media. I don't know how to access it, but I'm pretty sure I'm on it.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.